The morning shift alarm rattled through the dormitory sector like broken glass scraping against metal. Daniel Cross rolled off his narrow cot, his feet hitting the cold floor of what the station management generously called living quarters, but what everyone else knew as the coffin stacks. 2 meters by 3 meters of personal space. If you didn't count the fact that the walls were so thin, you could hear your neighbor breathing. He pulled on his work coveralls, the fabric stiff with dried sweat and recycling fluid that never quite got the smell out. The name patch had long since faded, but he knew what it said: D. Cross. Salvage Tech 3rd Class. Orbital Scrapyard 9. The lowest rung on a ladder that didn't really go anywhere. Outside his cube, the corridor hummed with the usual morning traffic. Workers shuffled past, their faces bearing that particular brand of exhaustion that came from knowing today would be exactly like yesterday, and tomorrow would be no different. The war had ended 3 years ago, but for people like them, the peace was just another kind of battle. "Another beautiful day in paradise," Marcus called out from his doorway, his voice thick with the sarcasm that passed for humor in the yards. The older man had been working salvage for 20 years, and it showed in the permanent hunch of his shoulders and the way his hands trembled when he thought no one was looking. "Living the dream," Daniel replied, falling into step beside him. They joined the stream of orange-suited workers heading for the transit pods that would take them out to the scrap fields. The orbital Scrapyard 9 stretched for kilometers in every direction, a graveyard of ships from the war that nobody wanted to remember, but couldn't afford to forget. Dreadnoughts the size of city blocks floated in slow, silent ballet with fighter craft no bigger than personal shuttles. Some bore the colors of Earth's united fleet. Others carried the strange geometries and impossible angles of the various alien races humanity had fought, allied with, betrayed, and been betrayed by in turn. Daniel's assignment for the day was Sector G4, what the workers called the deep graves. Ships there had been picked over so many times that finding anything valuable was like finding water in vacuum. But quotas were quotas, and the company didn't care if you had to squeeze blood from steel to meet them. The transit pod dropped him off at the edge of his sector, and he was alone. That was the one thing he actually liked about his job. Out here, among the dead ships and dying dreams, nobody bothered you. No supervisors breathing down your neck, no corporate messages about productivity and efficiency. Just you, the scanner, and the endless field of metal bones. He'd been working for 3 hours when his scanner picked up something unusual. Not the usual ping of recyclable alloys or the occasional chirp of intact electronics. This was different, organic. Daniel frowned, checking the readout. The signal was coming from inside what looked like an escape pod, half buried under a collapsed section of destroyer hull. Escape pods weren't unusual in the yards, but most had been cleared out years ago. Either the occupants had been rescued, or, well, nobody liked to talk about the alternative. He should have logged it and moved on. That was procedure. Organic material was a biohazard, required special teams, decontamination protocols, paperwork that would keep him off the fields for days without pay. But something made him pause. The signal was weak but steady. Not the decay signature of something dead, but the faint pulse of something still alive. Daniel looked around. The nearest surveillance drone was kilometers away, making its lazy orbit around the sector. He had maybe 20 minutes before it came back around. 20 minutes to satisfy his curiosity and get back to work. The pod's hatch was sealed but not locked. Military grade, from the look of it, but not human design. The metal was that strange blue-black alloy the Karis Empire used, the one that seemed to drink light rather than reflect it. Daniel had to use his plasma cutter to get through the outer seal, the metal screaming as it gave way. The smell hit him first. Not death, thankfully, but something else, like ozone and copper, and something floral he couldn't identify. The interior of the pod was dark, his helmet light cutting through the shadows to reveal. Daniel's breath caught in his throat. She was definitely not human. Her skin had a pearl-like quality, seeming to shift between pale silver and soft gold depending on how the light hit it. Her hair, if you could call it that, was more like strands of fiber optic cable, dim now, but still holding traces of what must have once been brilliant light. She was tall, maybe 2 meters, with proportions that were almost human but not quite. Everything slightly elongated, slightly too graceful, and she was dying. The bio readout on his scanner confirmed it. Whatever species she was, her life signs were fading: dehydration, malnutrition, exposure to vacuum when the pod's life support had partially failed. She'd been out here for weeks, maybe months. Her pod's emergency beacon either broken or deliberately disabled. Daniel should have backed away, should have sealed the pod, logged the discovery, and let the proper authorities handle it. That was the smart play, the safe play. Instead, he found himself moving closer. Her eyes opened. They were gold. Not like human eyes with gold irises, but completely gold, like looking into pools of liquid metal. For a moment, they stared at each other, human and alien, scavenger and whatever she was. She tried to speak, but only a whisper came out, in a language his translator couldn't parse. Her hand moved, just slightly, reaching for something. Daniel followed the gesture and saw it a small device, no bigger than his thumb, attached to what looked like a chain around her neck. With effort that seemed to cost her everything, she pulled it free and held it out to him. He took it without thinking. The moment it touched his gloved hand, his helmet display lit up with warnings. Military encryption, diplomatic protocols, priority flags he'd only seen in news feeds about the war's end. Whatever this device was, it was important. And whoever this woman was, she wasn't just any refugee. She whispered again, and this time his translator caught it, though the translation was rough. "Please, they betrayed." Then her eyes closed, and his scanner started screaming. Life signs critical. Minutes, maybe less. Daniel made his decision. The emergency medical kit in his work suit had stims, basic trauma supplies, things meant to keep a human alive long enough to reach proper medical. He had no idea if they'd work on her, might even kill her faster, but doing nothing would definitely kill her. He pressed the stim injector against her neck, where something that might have been an artery pulsed weakly under the skin. The hiss of the injection seemed impossibly loud in the confined space. For a moment, nothing happened. Then she gasped, her back arching, those golden eyes flying open. The fiber optic strands of her hair flickered with sudden light, patterns racing along their length like thoughts made visible. She was breathing, harsh and ragged, but breathing. "Need to get you out of here," Daniel said, not knowing if she could understand him. "Can you move?" She tried to sit up, managed it with his help. This close, he could see the marks on her wrists and ankles, burn patterns that looked deliberate, restraint marks. Someone had held her, hurt her, then left her to die in the cold between the stars. "Who did this to you?" he asked. She looked at him, and there was something regal in that gaze despite her condition. When she spoke, the translator worked better this time, though her voice was still barely above a whisper. "Does it matter they won? I lost. The story ends." "Not yet it doesn't," Daniel said, surprising himself with the firmness in his voice. "Can you walk?" She tried to stand and immediately collapsed. Daniel caught her, her weight surprisingly light for her height. She was trembling, her skin cold, even through his suit. "Okay, plan B," he muttered. The maintenance sled he'd used to get to the pod would hold them both. Barely. The trip back to his assigned sector took 15 minutes, every second feeling like an hour as he waited for someone to notice, for an alarm to sound. But the yards were vast, and nobody cared what one salvage tech was doing, as long as he made quota. The real problem was what to do with her once his shift ended. Taking her to medical was out of the question. The moment they scanned her, she'd be flagged as a non-registered alien. Best case, she'd be detained indefinitely while bureaucrats figured out what to do with her. Worst case, and more likely, she'd disappear into some black site laboratory. The war might be over, but the fear and paranoia it had bred were alive and well. His quarters were too small, too exposed. The walls were thin enough that Mrs. Patterson next door would hear an ant sneeze, and the surveillance in the corridors, while not comprehensive, was still there. That left one option, and it wasn't a good one. Level 385. The Forgotten Floor, workers called it. A section of the station that had been damaged in an attack during the war and never properly repaired. Officially condemned, unofficially ignored, because it would cost more to fix or demolish than to just pretend it didn't exist. People went there sometimes, when they needed to disappear for a while. Deals were made, things were hidden, and as long as you didn't cause trouble, security didn't venture down there. Daniel had a hideaway there. A maintenance room he'd claimed years ago when he'd needed space to work on a side project that hadn't exactly been legal. It had power, barely, and water, mostly. It would have to do. Getting her there without being seen was another challenge. She was conscious, but barely coherent, drifting in and out of awareness. The stimulant was wearing off, and he didn't dare give her another dose without knowing how her biology would react. He wrapped her in an emergency blanket from his kit, the reflective material hiding her alien features. To anyone watching, she'd look like another worker who'd had an accident, being helped back by a colleague. It happened often enough in the yards that nobody would look twice. The journey through the station was the longest of his life. Every corridor seemed to stretch forever. Every security camera seemed to turn their way. She leaned heavily on him, her breathing shallow, occasionally murmuring in her own language. The translator caught fragments: empire, trust, burning, alone. Finally, they reached level 385. The lights here were mostly dead, the few that worked flickering like dying stars. The air smelled of rust and old recycling fluid. Daniel's hideaway was at the end of a corridor that officially didn't exist, behind a door marked with warnings about structural instability that he'd put there himself. The room wasn't much, maybe 4 meters by 4 meters, but it was hidden, and it was his. He'd dragged an old cot down here years ago, had a few supply crates he used as furniture, and had jury-rigged power from a conduit that fed the emergency systems. The water came from a pipe that he was pretty sure was supposed to be sealed off. It wasn't home, but it was safe. He got her onto the cot, and she immediately curled into herself, shivering despite the blanket. In the better light of his hideaway, he could see more clearly the extent of her condition. She was thin, too thin. Her pearl skin stretched tight over bones that seemed too delicate to be real. There were more marks, too. Precise patterns that looked medical rather than violent. Someone had been experimenting on her. "Water," she whispered, and he quickly filled a container from his supply. She drank slowly, carefully, as if remembering how. When she finished, she looked at him with those golden eyes, and he saw intelligence there, sharp despite her weakness. "Why?" she asked. "Why what? Why help me? You don't know me. I'm not your kind." Daniel considered the question. The smart answer was that he didn't know, that it had been impulse, stupidity. But looking at her, broken and abandoned in a place where broken and abandoned things went to die, he found a different answer. "Because someone should," he said simply. She studied him for a long moment, then closed her eyes. "You're a fool." "Probably," he agreed. "They'll come for me, when they realize." "Who's they?" She was quiet for so long he thought she'd fallen asleep. Then, so quietly he almost missed it. "Everyone." Daniel pulled up a crate and sat down. suddenly exhausted. He'd just committed probably a dozen crimes, harboring an illegal alien being the least of them. His quiet, safe, boring life had just become very complicated. But looking at her, this strange, beautiful, broken creature someone had thrown away like garbage, he couldn't bring himself to regret it. "What's your name?" he asked. She opened one eye. "Does it matter?" "It does to me." A pause. Then Serenia. I am Serenia." "Daniel," he replied. "Daniel Cross." "Daniel Cross," she repeated, as if tasting the words. "The fool who saves trash." "Guess so." She closed her eye again, but he thought he saw the faintest hint of what might have been a smile. "Thank you, Daniel Cross." He spent the next few hours trying to make her comfortable. He found some emergency rations in his supplies, though she could only manage a few bites. The water seemed to help more. He'd need to get medical supplies somehow. Antibiotics. Maybe. If those even worked on her species. Food she could digest. Information about her biology, so he didn't accidentally poison her trying to help. All problems for tomorrow. Right now, she needed rest and safety, and he could provide that much at least. As the station's night cycle began, casting the already dim room into deeper shadow, Daniel found himself watching her sleep. The fiber-optic strands of her hair had dimmed to almost nothing, just the faintest pulse of light running through them in time with her heartbeat. Her breathing had steadied, though she occasionally whimpered, caught in dreams he could only imagine were nightmares. The device she'd given him sat heavy in his pocket. He'd looked at it briefly, but the technology was beyond anything he'd seen. Kiris Empire design, maybe, but modified. Whatever information it contained, someone had thought it worth dying to protect, or worth killing to hide. A sound in the corridor made him freeze. Footsteps, slow and deliberate. Not the shuffling gait of a drunk worker or the quick pace of someone with somewhere to be. These were the steps of someone searching. Daniel moved to the door, listening. The footsteps stopped right outside. A long moment of silence. Then they moved on, fading into the distance. He let out a breath he didn't know he'd been holding. "They know," Serenia whispered from the cot. He turned to find her watching him, those golden eyes catching what little light there was. "Know what?" "That I survived. That someone helped me." She tried to sit up, winced, lay back down. "You should run. Leave me. Save yourself." "Yeah, well, I'm not great at making smart decisions," Daniel said, moving back to sit beside her. "Ask anyone." "I'm serious." "So am I." He met her gaze steadily. "Someone threw you away, left you to die in the dark. I know what that feels like." She studied him. "You're not what I expected. From humans. From anyone." She closed her eyes again, but her voice was stronger when she continued. "I was queen of the Karis Third Fleet. We were going to change everything. Peace. Real peace. Not just the absence of war. But peace is bad for business. Daniel Cross. Bad for those who profit from fear and hatred." "Someone sold you out." "Someone. Everyone. Does it matter?" She laughed, a sound like breaking crystal. The great Queen Serenia, brought low by trust, by believing others wanted what I wanted. "Who was it who betrayed you?" Her eyes opened again, and there was fire in them now, brief but bright. "Admiral Cale Thorne, your people's great hero. He promised alliance, promised partnership. Then he took our defense codes, our fleet positions, everything, sold them to our enemies and yours alike. The battle at Karis Prime. It wasn't a battle. It was a slaughter. And when I tried to reveal the truth, he made you disappear." "Made me an example. First the experiments, to see what makes us weak. Then the pod, programmed to fail slowly, so I would have time to think about my failures as I died. The fire dimmed. He won. They all won. and the war ended with their pockets full, and my people scattered to the cosmic winds. Daniel felt anger rising in his chest. He'd heard of Admiral Thorne, of course. Everyone had. The hero of Karis Prime. The man who'd ended the war. They were talking about building monuments to him. The device you gave me? Evidence, recordings, communications, proof of what really happened. Not that it matters now. Who would believe a dead queen over a living hero? You're not dead. I should be. Would be easier. She turned her face away. Why didn't you leave me in the pod? Daniel thought about it. About the moment he'd seen her reaching for the device. The desperation in those golden eyes. My family had a mining operation on Colony 4. Small, independent. The kind the corporations hate because we wouldn't sell out. When the war started, Admiral Thorne requisitioned our equipment for the war effort. Promised compensation. Promised we'd be heroes supporting the cause. He paused, the memory still bitter after all these years. The compensation never came. The equipment was never returned. My father tried to fight it legally, but you can't fight a war hero. We lost everything. My parents died working corporate contracts, trying to pay off debts that shouldn't have existed. My sister. He stopped, shook his head. Thorne's good at making people disappear when they become inconvenient. Serenia turned back to him, and something passed between them. Understanding. Maybe. Or recognition. 2 pieces of trash, thrown away by the same hand. So what do we do? She asked. First, we keep you alive. Then we figure out the rest. And if they come for me? Daniel thought about the footsteps in the corridor. About the life he'd built in the shadows of greater things, safe and small and meaningless. Then he thought about the restraint marks on her wrists, about a pod programmed to fail slowly, about his parents dying for someone else's glory. Then we make them earn it, he said. For the first time since he'd found her, Serenia smiled. It was a small thing, tentative and fragile, but real. You really are a fool, Daniel Cross. Yeah, he agreed, but I'm your fool now. The night stretched on, and in a forgotten room, on a forgotten floor of a station nobody cared about, 2 broken things began the slow process of becoming something else. Something dangerous. Something that might, just might, be enough to make the universe pay attention. Outside, the salvage yards continued their slow dance, dead ships spinning in the dark, holding their secrets close. But secrets, Daniel knew, had a way of coming to light. Even the ones that could burn the universe down. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. He'd need to find food she could eat, medicine that wouldn't kill her, a way to keep her hidden while she recovered. He'd need to be smarter than he'd ever been, more careful than his nature allowed. He'd need to become someone he wasn't sure he could be. But tonight, in this moment, it was enough that she was alive, that she was safe, that somewhere in this vast, cold universe, 2 people who should never have met had found each other in the dark. Rest, he told her. I'll keep watch. You need sleep too. I'll sleep when you're stronger. She studied him with those impossible eyes. I was a queen, you know. I could order you to rest. You were a queen, he agreed. But right now, you're my patient, and I'm stubborn. That crystal laugh again, stronger this time. Very well, Daniel Cross. But when I'm stronger, we'll discuss your insubordination. Looking forward to it. She closed her eyes, and soon her breathing deepened into sleep. Daniel stayed awake, watching the door, listening to the station's bones creak and settle around them. Somewhere out there, Admiral Thorne was probably sleeping in silk sheets, dreaming of his monuments. Somewhere, the truth was buried under medals and propaganda. But here, in this small, forgotten room, the truth was breathing. It was alive. And Daniel Cross, salvage tech 3rd class, nobody from nowhere, was going to make sure it stayed that way. The first 3 days were the hardest. Daniel had to maintain his normal routine, showing up for shifts, meeting quotas, acting like nothing had changed while his mind raced with 1,000 ways this could go wrong. Every morning he'd leave before dawn, and every evening he'd return with whatever supplies he could smuggle out without raising suspicion. Medical supplies were the biggest challenge. The station's pharmacy was locked down tighter than the corporate executive's deck, and black market meds were either expired, fake, or designed for human physiology. He'd managed to trade some salvaged electronics for basic antibiotics and pain relievers, praying they wouldn't cause Serenya's alien biology to shut down completely. She was getting stronger, though slowly. The pearl-like quality of her skin had lost its gray undertone, returning to that shifting silver gold that seemed to capture light from nowhere. Her hair, those fiber-optic strands, pulsed with more regular patterns now, especially when she was thinking hard about something. "You're staring again," she said without opening her eyes. Daniel looked away, embarrassed. He'd been changing the makeshift bandage on a cut along her arm, but had gotten distracted by the way her skin seemed to be healing itself. New tissue forming in patterns that looked almost like circuitry. "Sorry, it's just, your biology is fascinating." "Is that what humans call it? Fascinating?" She opened one golden eye, a hint of amusement there. "Your people usually use words like abomination or unnatural." "Yeah, well, most of my people are idiots." She sat up carefully, still favoring her left side where the worst of the injuries had been. "Speaking of your people, you've been tense. More than usual. What's wrong?" Daniel hesitated. He'd been hoping to avoid this conversation until she was stronger, but Serenya had proven remarkably perceptive. Maybe it was a queen thing, reading people like they were battle plans. "There've been questions. At work. People noticed I've been trading for medical supplies." "They suspect—" "Not about you specifically, but Marcus, one of the older workers. He pulled me aside yesterday. Said people are talking. Said I should be careful." Serenya was quiet for a moment, then stood. She moved to the small window he'd uncovered, really just a maintenance viewport that looked out onto a service corridor. "I'm putting you in danger by being here. You were in danger when I found you. That was my danger. This is yours." She turned to face him, and there was something regal in her bearing despite the borrowed clothes and bandages. "I won't have your death on my conscience. Daniel Cross." "Good thing you're not strong enough to leave yet. Then—" "I'm serious." "So am I." He stood too, facing her. "You think I don't know the risks? You think I'm some naive kid playing hero?" "Aren't you—" The question stung more than he'd expected. "Maybe, but I'd rather be a naive hero than a smart coward." "Heroes die. Daniel, I've seen it. Led them to their deaths. Even—" Her voice carried weight. Memories of battles he could only imagine. Cowards at least live to remember. "Is that what you want to be remembered as, the queen who ran—" Fire flashed in her eyes, brief but hot. "Careful." "No. You want to talk about running about being safe. You could have stayed hidden in that pod until you died quietly. No one would have known. But you gave me that device. You reached out. Why?" She turned back to the window. "Desperation." "Bull. You wanted someone to know. You wanted the truth to survive, even if you didn't. And look where that's gotten us. You, risking everything for an alien who shouldn't exist. Me, hiding in a maintenance room like a scared child." Daniel moved closer. Not quite touching, but close enough that she could feel his presence. "You know what I see when I look at you." "A fool's errand." "Potential." She turned, surprised. "You're not just some refugee, Serenya. You're a queen. You have knowledge, connections, information that could burn down everything Thorn built. And you're alive. That's not nothing. Knowledge is useless without power to act on it. Then we get power." She laughed, that crystal sound that he was starting to enjoy. We, a salvage worker and a dead queen against the hero of the war. Sounds like fair odds to me. She studied him, those golden eyes searching for something. You're serious? Dead serious. This isn't your fight. It became my fight the moment I opened that pod. He pulled out the device she'd given him, holding it between them. Besides, someone needs to teach you about human stubbornness. Consider it cultural exchange. For a long moment, they stood there, two unlikely allies in a forgotten room. Then Serenia smiled, a real smile that transformed her face from beautiful to stunning. Very well, Daniel Cross. Teach me about human stubbornness. But I warn you, Kira's queens are quick learners. Over the next week, they developed a routine. Daniel would work his shifts, gathering information and supplies. Serenia would rest, heal, and share her knowledge of the political landscape that had led to her downfall. In the evenings, they would plan. Thorn's power comes from 3 sources, Serenia explained one night, drawing diagrams on the floor with a piece of chalk Daniel had found. Military backing, corporate sponsors, and public opinion. Remove anyone, and the others become vulnerable. Public opinion should be easiest. We have the evidence. Evidence means nothing without a platform. Who would broadcast it? The media conglomerates that profit from defense contracts, the networks owned by Thorne's supporters. Daniel frowned, thinking, what about the underground network's pirate broadcasts? Independent journalists? Perhaps. But we'd need something more than just data. We'd need a story. Humans respond to narratives, not facts. The story of a queen betrayed isn't enough. Not from me alone. I'm the enemy. Remember the alien threat that justified the war. She drew another circle on the floor. But you, a human who found me, saved me, risked everything for the truth. That's different. I'm nobody, just a salvage tech. Exactly. You're everyone. Every worker. Every forgotten person. Every human who's been told to shut up and be grateful for the peace. She connected the circles with lines. Thorne positions himself as the protector of humanity. But what if humanity doesn't need protecting from aliens? What if it needs protecting from him? Daniel was about to respond when footsteps echoed in the corridor outside. Not the casual wandering of lost workers or maintenance bots, but purposeful, military precision. Multiple sets. He grabbed Serenia's arm, pulling her away from the door. Hide! Now! Where? He pushed aside a panel in the wall, revealing a crawl space he'd discovered years ago. In here. Don't come out, no matter what. Daniel! Go! She slipped into the space just as the door exploded inward. Security forces poured in. Not station security, but military police. Their armor bearing the insignia of fleet intelligence. Daniel counted 6, all armed, all pointing weapons at him. Daniel Cross, the lead officer said, his voice mechanical through the helmet speaker. You're under arrest for violation of Station Code 4, subsection 12, harboring unauthorized biological material. I don't know what you're talking about. The officer tilted his head, and Daniel could feel the smirk even through the helmet. Funny. Your biosignature has been all over Sector G4, specifically near a recovered escape pod containing organic residue. You want to try that again? Daniel stayed silent. Smart man. Now, where is it? Where's what? The officer moved faster than Daniel expected. The armored gauntlet catching him across the face and sending him to the floor. Blood filled his mouth. The alien. The one you've been stealing medical supplies for. The one you've been hiding like a pet. I don't. Another blow. This one to his ribs. Daniel curled up, gasping. We can do this easy or hard, Cross. Either way, we're going to find it. The only question is whether you're still breathing when we do. Daniel spat blood. Go to hell. The officer laughed. Hard way it is. He turned to his team. Tear this place apart. Check every panel, every vent, every possible hiding spot. They went to work with professional efficiency, but Daniel had hidden Serenia well. The crawlspace was behind a false panel that looked like solid wall, and unless they had specific scanning equipment, one of the soldiers pulled out a bioscanner, military grade, the kind that could detect a heartbeat through 3 meters of steel. Daniel's heart sank. The scanner swept the room in slow arcs, the soldier watching the display carefully. It passed over the false panel once, twice. Nothing. Daniel didn't understand. Serenia was there. She had to be showing up on... Unless... Her biology was different. Maybe different enough that standard bioscanners couldn't detect her properly. Or maybe she had some ability he didn't know about. Some way to mask her presence. "Nothing here, sir," the soldier reported. The officer grabbed Daniel by the throat, lifting him to his feet. "Where is it?" "I told you. I don't know what you're talking about." "The medical supplies, the changed routine, the power draw from this illegal hideout. You expect me to believe you did all this for nothing?" Daniel forced a laugh through the pain. "Have you seen the prices in the station medical center? I was hurt on the job. Couldn't afford treatment. So, yeah, I got supplies black market. That a crime now?" The officer studied him through the helmet's visor. "You're lying." "Prove it." For a moment, Daniel thought the officer would kill him right there. The gauntlet tightened on his throat, cutting off air. Spots danced in his vision. Then a voice crackled over the officer's comm unit. "Team 6, report." The officer released Daniel, who collapsed gasping. "Team 6 here. Location secured, but no sign of the target. Negative biological readings. Confirmed. Subject may have been moved. Return to base. Admiral Thorne wants a full debrief." Daniel's blood ran cold. Thorne. Of course he was behind this. The officer looked down at him. "This isn't over. Cross. We'll be watching. And when you make a mistake, and you will, we'll be there." They filed out, leaving Daniel bleeding on the floor of his destroyed hideout. He waited a full 5 minutes before crawling to the false panel. Serenia. The panel slid open and she emerged, her skin pale, those fiber optic strands dim. "Are you hurt?" "I'll live. How did you hide from the scanner?" "Kyrus biology. We can slow our metabolic rate, become nearly undetectable. But..." She swayed, and he caught her. "It takes energy I don't have to spare." He helped her to the overturned cot. "They know. Thorne knows. Not everything. If they knew what I was, who I was, they wouldn't have left." She touched his split lip gently, and he was surprised by how warm her fingers were. "You didn't tell them anything." "Nothing to tell." "Liar." But she said it with affection. "We can't stay here." "I know." Daniel looked around the destroyed room. "I might know a place, but it's risky." "Riskier than here. Different kind of risk." Marcus Steele lived in the better part of the station, which wasn't saying much. His quarters were still small, still dingy, but he had a real window and a door that locked properly. He also had a reputation for minding his own business and a general distrust of authority that ran deeper than most. Daniel knocked on his door at what passed for midnight on the station, supporting Serenia, who was wrapped in a maintenance coverall with the hood pulled low. Marcus opened the door, took one look at them, and sighed. "I knew you were into something stupid. Can we come in? Can I say no without you bleeding on my doorstep?" "Probably not." Marcus stepped aside. "Get in here before someone sees you." Inside, Marcus's quarters were surprisingly neat. Tools arranged on wall mounts, a small kitchen area that actually looked used, and most surprisingly, shelves of actual paper books, a luxury most couldn't afford. Serenia pushed back her hood, and Marcus froze. "Well," he said after a long moment, "that's definitely something." "Marcus, this is Serenia." "Serenia, Marcus." Marcus studied her with the same careful attention he gave to complex salvage. "You're Kyrus." "I am." "Thought your people were all gone. scattered after the battle at Karis Prime. Something shifted in Serenya's expression. Most are, but not you. It wasn't a question. Marcus moved to his kitchen, pulling out a bottle of something that smelled like engine cleaner, but was probably alcohol. Drink. Please, Daniel said. Marcus poured 3 glasses. So, want to tell me why you're harboring what I'm guessing is a very important alien in my quarters at midnight, while bleeding from what looks like a military police beating? Daniel took a sip, winced at the burn. It's complicated. It always is with you young idealists. Marcus sat down, his movements careful. Daniel noticed his hands were shaking worse than usual. Let me guess. You found her in the yards, decided to play hero, and now Thorne's dogs are sniffing around. You know about Thorne. Marcus laughed, bitter and sharp. Boy, everyone knows about Thorne. The question is whether they care. He looked at Serenya. You're the one he reported dead. Aren't you, the Karis military commander who supposedly died in the battle? Queen, Serenya corrected softly. I was queen of the Third Fleet. Marcus went very still. Well, that is something indeed. He drained his glass, poured another. You have proof about what really happened. Daniel pulled out the device. Everything's on here. Communications, orders, evidence of the betrayal. And you want to what? Broadcast it. Take down the great war hero. Marcus shook his head. You're going to get yourselves killed. Maybe, Serenya said. But the alternative is living with the lie, letting him profit from genocide while my people scatter to the cosmic winds. Marcus studied her. You don't talk like military. I was a philosopher before I was a queen. The war made soldiers of us all. Philosophy, Marcus laughed again, but it was less bitter. Haven't heard that word in years. Everyone's too busy surviving to think about why we should. Perhaps that's the problem, Serenya said. They sat in silence for a moment. Then Marcus stood. You can stay. For tonight. Tomorrow. We figure out something better. Marcus, you don't have to. Shut up, boy. I've been working these yards for 20 years. Watching the rot spread. Watching good people ground down while bastards like Thorne build monuments to their lies. He looked at Serenya. Your Majesty, or whatever I should call you. I don't know if you can actually hurt Thorne, but if there's even a chance. He shrugged. Well, I'm old. What's the worst they can do? Kill me a few years early. Daniel felt something ease in his chest. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. If we're doing this, we're doing it right. No more hiding in maintenance rooms. No more scrambling for supplies. Marcus moved to his bookshelf, pulling out what looked like a technical manual, but was actually hollow. Inside was a credit chip. Emergency fund should be enough to get you both off station. We're not running, Serenya said. Not running, regrouping. Marcus put the chip on the table. You want to fight Thorne. You need allies, resources, a plan that's better than release the evidence and hope for the best. You have something in mind, Daniel asked. Maybe. There's a journalist, Rebecca Stone. Used to work for the major networks before she started asking the wrong questions. Now she runs an independent operation out of the outer rings. If anyone would run your story, it's her. Can we trust her? Can you trust anyone? Marcus countered. But she hates Thorne almost as much as you probably do. Lost her brother at Karis Prime. Never believed the official story. Serenya picked up the credit chip, studying it. Why are you helping us? Marcus was quiet for a long moment. Had a daughter once. Smart. Idealistic. Always talking about making things better. She joined the fleet. Wanted to be part of the peace process after the war. He turned away. Ship disappeared during a routine patrol near Karis space. Official report said mechanical failure. But the last message she sent me, she said she'd discovered something. Something about irregular orders. About ships being somewhere they shouldn't be. When was this? Serenya asked, her her voice gentle. 3 days before Keras Prime. The implications hung in the air like smoke. "I'm sorry," Serenia said. "Don't be sorry. Be successful." Marcus turned back to them. "Now, you both need rest. Tomorrow, I'll start putting out feelers. See what the word is on the military sweeps. Daniel, you're calling in sick to work. That face of yours needs time to heal anyway." Daniel touched his swollen lip. "What about you?" "I'm just an old man who drinks too much and keeps to himself. Nobody suspects the harmless ones." He moved to a closet, pulling out blankets. "Couch folds out. Try not to bleed on it." As they settled in for the night, Daniel found himself watching Serenia. She sat by Marcus's small window, looking out at the lights of the station, the salvage yards beyond. In the reflected light, she looked both ancient and young, powerful and vulnerable. "What are you thinking?" he asked. "That kindness exists in unexpected places," she said. "You're Marcus. He carries much pain. Most of us do these days." "Yes, but he chooses to help anyway. That's uncommon. Maybe not as uncommon as you think." She turned to him. "You still believe that after everything—" "I have to, otherwise what's the point?" She moved to sit beside him on the folded-out couch. "You're bleeding again." He touched his lip, fingers coming away red. "It's nothing." "Stop saying that." She tore a piece from the blanket, dabbing at the cut with surprising gentleness. "You could have told them where I was. Ended this." "Never crossed my mind." "Liar." "Okay. It crossed my mind for about half a second. Then I remembered I'm stubborn." That crystal laugh again. Quiet, so as not to wake Marcus. "Human stubbornness. Is it a genetic trait?" "More like a survival mechanism. We're not the strongest, not the smartest. Definitely not the most advanced. But we're really, really bad at giving up. Even when you should, especially then." She finished cleaning the cut, but didn't move away. This close. He could see the patterns in her skin, like circuitry made of pearl, could feel the warmth she radiated. "Daniel," she said softly, "if this goes badly—" "It won't." "But if it does—" He caught her hand. "Then we go down fighting, together." She looked at their joined hands, his rough and scarred from years of salvage work, hers elegant despite everything she'd been through. "Together," she repeated, as if testing the word. "Get some sleep," he said. "Tomorrow we start a war." "We're starting a war. The truth is a kind of warfare, and we're about to deploy a nuclear option." She smiled. "You're learning to think like a queen." "God help me." As she settled down to sleep, Daniel stayed awake, watching the door, thinking about everything that had led to this moment. 3 weeks ago, he'd been nobody, doing nothing, going nowhere. Now he was harboring an alien queen, planning to take down a war hero, and somehow he'd convinced an old drunk to help them do it. Maybe he really was a fool. But as he looked at Serenia, sleeping now, her face peaceful for the first time since he'd found her, he thought maybe being a fool wasn't the worst thing to be. The worst thing was being a coward. And Daniel Cross, salvage tech 3rd class, was many things. But he wasn't that. The transport shuttle to the outer rings was a rust bucket held together by prayer and industrial adhesive. But it was anonymous. Nobody looked twice at workers heading to the frontier stations for contract work. Daniel had darkened his hair with engine grease and wore thick work goggles that covered most of his bruised face. Serenia was wrapped in layers of clothing, her distinctive features hidden beneath a respiratory mask that wasn't uncommon in the poorly filtered air of cheaper transports. Marcus had stayed behind, said he'd be more useful, keeping an eye on things at the station, feeding them information about military movements. The old man had pressed a communication device into Daniel's hand before they left. Something he'd built himself that supposedly couldn't be traced. "Don't trust the public networks," he'd said. "And don't trust anyone who smiles too much." Rebecca Stone didn't smile at all when they met her. The journalist operated out of what used to be a mining platform, now converted into a maze of servers, transmission equipment, and enough encryption hardware to make a military base jealous. She was younger than Daniel expected, maybe 35, with burn scars along one side of her neck that she made no effort to hide. "So," she said, not bothering with pleasantries, "Marcus says you have something that could hurt Thorne." Daniel placed the device on her desk. Rebecca didn't touch it, just stared at it like it might explode. "That's Kara's tech," she said. "Yes," Serenia said, lowering her hood. Rebecca's hand moved to the pistol at her hip but didn't draw it. "You're supposed to be dead." "A lot of people are supposed to be dead. Thorne's very good at arranging that." They stared at each other for a long moment. Then Rebecca laughed, bitter and sharp. "The Karis Queen, the one he claimed died in glorious battle, protecting her people to the last. I died in a cage, slowly, while he extracted information about my fleet's positions. The glorious battle was a slaughter he orchestrated." Rebecca finally picked up the device, turning it over in her hands. "Can you prove it?" "Everything's on there. Communications, orders, recordings of Thorne making deals with your enemies and ours. The location of mass graves that don't match official records. Financial transfers to accounts that supposedly don't exist." Rebecca plugged the device into an isolated system, her eyes scanning the data as it flowed across her screens. Her expression grew darker with each file she opened. "Jesus Christ," she whispered. "He sold out 3 colonies, human colonies." "Power doesn't discriminate in its victims," Serenia said. Rebecca looked up at them. "This is enough to start a war. A real war. Not the proxy conflicts we've been fighting." "Or end one permanently," Daniel said. "If people knew the truth." "People don't want truth. They want comfort. They want to believe their sacrifices meant something." Rebecca stood, pacing. "But this might be enough to break through that." "So you'll broadcast it?" Daniel asked. "It's not that simple. The moment I put this out there, Thorne will know. He'll mobilize everything, claim it's fake, probably manufactured by Karis remnants to destabilize the peace. And he'll come for all of us." "He's already coming for us," Serenia said. "No. He's looking for you. There's a difference. Once this goes public, he'll be hunting. And he has resources we can't match." Daniel leaned forward. "So what do you suggest?" Rebecca pulled up a holographic display of the local system. "We need more than just data. We need witnesses, collaborators, people who can verify this independently. And we need a platform bigger than my little operation." "The memorial," Serenia said suddenly. They both looked at her. "In 3 days, there's a memorial service for the Battle of Karis Prime. Thorne will be there, along with most of the military command and media. It's being broadcast across all human space." Rebecca's eyes widened. "You want to hijack the memorial broadcast?" "I want to give them something to memorialize properly," Serenia said. And there was steel in her voice. "That's insane," Rebecca said. Then, after a moment, "It might work." They spent the next 2 days planning. Rebecca had contacts in the broadcast station, technicians who owed her favors, or shared her distrust of the official narrative. Daniel and Serenia worked on preparing the evidence, organizing it into something that could be understood quickly, viscerally. "People need to see faces," Rebecca explained. "Numbers don't move them. Stories do." So they pulled the stories from the data. The colony of New Haven, sold out for mining rights. Its entire population enslaved or killed. The Karis medical ship, marked with symbols of neutrality, destroyed while carrying wounded from both sides. The human prisoners of war, supposedly released, actually sold to labor camps in the outer rings. "How did nobody know about this?" Daniel asked, sickened by what he was reading. "People knew," Rebecca said. "They just didn't know it was connected. A colony goes dark. It's a technical failure. A ship disappears. It's the hazards of war. Prisoners don't come home. Well, war is hell, but put it all together. It's a pattern, Serenia finished. A deliberate, profitable pattern. On the morning of the memorial, they were in position. Rebecca had gotten them maintenance uniforms and identification that would pass casual scrutiny. The broadcast station was a massive structure at the heart of the human administrative sector, its spires reaching toward space like fingers grasping for heaven. "Remember," Rebecca said through their earpieces, "we have maybe 10 minutes once the hack starts before they can shut us down physically. The message has to be clear, undeniable, and impossible to refute." Daniel and Serenia made their way through the service corridors, following the route Rebecca had mapped out. The station was busy with memorial preparations, nobody paying attention to two more maintenance workers. They reached the main broadcast room just as the ceremony was beginning. On the monitors, they could see Admiral Thorne taking the podium, his uniform gleaming with medals, his face set in an expression of noble grief. "My fellow humans," Thorne began, his voice carrying across the cosmos. "We gather today to remember the brave souls who gave their lives for our freedom." "Now," Rebecca said. Daniel inserted the device into the main broadcast terminal, while Serenia's fingers flew across the control panel. Her Keras technology interfacing with the human systems in ways that should have been impossible. For a moment, nothing happened. Thorne continued his speech about sacrifice and honor. Then the screens flickered. Thorne's image was replaced by the evidence, documents, recordings, images flowing too fast to stop, too clear to deny. And over it all, Serenia's voice, pre-recorded but powerful. "I am Serenia, Queen of the Keras Third Fleet. I did not die at Keras Prime. I was betrayed, captured, tortured, and left to die by Admiral Cale Thorne. What you are seeing is the truth he has hidden. The peace you celebrate is built on the bones of the innocent, human and Keras alike." The broadcast room erupted in chaos. Security was mobilizing, but Rebecca's contacts had done their work well, sealing doors, redirecting elevators, buying precious minutes. On the screens, Thorne's face had gone from shocked to furious. He was shouting orders, but the audio was still hijacked, playing a recording of his own voice. "The Keras are finished. Their queen is my prisoner, and soon she'll be dead. The colonies that resist will be examples, human or alien. It doesn't matter. This is about power, and I intend to have it all." Daniel watched the timer Rebecca had set up. 8 minutes. They just had to hold for 8 minutes. The door to the broadcast room exploded inward. Military police poured in, weapons raised. "Step away from the console," the lead officer shouted. Daniel moved to comply, but Serenia stood her ground. "Not yet." "I will shoot you." "Then the universe will watch you murder an unarmed woman during a peace memorial. I'm sure that will play well." The officer hesitated. The broadcast was still going, showing image after image of the mass graves, the destroyed medical ships, the human colonists in chains. 6 minutes, Rebecca whispered through the earpiece. That's when Thorne himself arrived. He looked older in person, Daniel thought. The heroic figure from the propaganda was just a man, gray-haired and cruel-eyed, his face twisted with rage. "Shut it down," he ordered. "Sir, the system is locked. We'd have to destroy the entire broadcast array." "Then destroy it." "But sir, the memorial." Thorne grabbed the officer's weapon and aimed it at Serenia. "You're dead. I killed you myself." "You tried," Serenia said calmly. "But humans aren't the only ones who are stubborn. You think this changes anything by tomorrow. This will be dismissed as enemy propaganda, a deep fake, a desperate attempt by Keras, remnants to destabilize the peace." "Maybe," Serenia said. "But the seed of doubt will be planted, and seeds have a way of growing." 4 minutes, Rebecca said. Thorne's finger tightened on the trigger. "I should have burned your whole worthless species when I had the chance." "Like you burned New Haven," Daniel said, stepping forward. Like you burned the colony where my family lived? Thorne's eyes flicked to him. You, the salvage rat. You started this. No, you started this. I just found what you threw away. 3 minutes. It doesn't matter, Thorne said. In 3 minutes, this broadcast ends. In 10 minutes, you'll all be dead. In a day, this will be forgotten. Will it? Serenia asked. Can you kill everyone who sees this silence? Every question you've built your power on fear? Admiral. But fear only works when people have something left to lose. 2 minutes. More security forces were arriving, but also journalists, drawn by the chaos. Some had their cameras out, recording everything. The broadcast might end, but the story wouldn't. You've lost, Serenia said. You just don't know it yet. Thorne pulled the trigger. Daniel moved without thinking, throwing himself in front of Serenia. The energy blast caught him in the shoulder, spinning him around. Pain exploded through his body as he hit the ground. Daniel. Serenia dropped beside him, her hands pressing against the wound. 1 minute, Rebecca said, her voice tight. Thorne aimed again, but one of the journalists stepped forward, camera focused on him. Admiral Thorne, care to comment on the allegations? Is that really your voice on those recordings? Others pressed forward, shouting questions. The security forces looked uncertain, weapons wavering between protecting Thorne and controlling the crowd. 30 seconds. Serenia looked up at Thorne, and Daniel saw something in her eyes he hadn't seen before. Not fear, not anger, but pity. You could have been remembered as a hero, she said. Now you'll be remembered as you truly are. 10 seconds. The screens went dark. The broadcast was over. But in the room, the cameras kept rolling, recording Thorne standing over a wounded human and an alien queen, weapon in hand, face twisted with rage while journalists shouted questions about war crimes and genocide. Get me out of here, Thorne snarled to his security. They formed a protective circle around him, pushing through the crowd. But Daniel could see it in their faces. The doubt, the questions. The perfect hero had shown his true face, and they couldn't unsee it. Medical teams arrived, working on Daniel's shoulder. The wound was bad, but not fatal, the energy blast having cauterized even as it destroyed tissue. You're an idiot, Serenia said, but her voice was fond. Learn from the best, he managed through the pain. Rebecca appeared beside them, grinning fiercely. It worked. The broadcast went out to over 3 billion viewers. The networks are already picking it up, running analysis, demanding answers. Thorne will respond, Serenia said. This isn't over. No, Rebecca agreed, but it's begun. They were arrested, of course, but not disappeared. Not with so many witnesses, so many cameras. The trial would be public, and that was what they'd wanted all along. A platform, a stage, a chance for the truth to be heard. As they were led away, Daniel caught a glimpse of the public feeds. Protests were already forming, not just humans, but other species too. Those who had suffered in the war and its aftermath. The memorial for the dead had become a rally for the living. 3 days later, in a holding cell awaiting trial, they watched as Admiral Thorne gave a press conference. He denied everything, called it a conspiracy, enemy action designed to undermine the peace. But behind him, his supporters were fewer. Some of the military brass were notably absent. The corporate sponsors were distancing themselves. He's wounded, Serenia said. Dangerous, but wounded. What happens now? Daniel asked. Now we fight in court instead of shadows. Now we make them listen to every piece of evidence, every testimony. She turned to him, touching his healing shoulder gently. You didn't have to take that shot for me. Yes, I did. Why? He thought about it. About the moment he'd seen Thorne's finger tighten on the trigger. About the decision that hadn't really been a decision at all. Because that's what you do for family, he said simply. She looked at him for a long moment, then leaned in and kissed him, It was gentle, careful of his injuries, but there was promise in it too. Promise of a future neither of them had expected to have. "When this is over," she said, "when Thorn has fallen and the truth is known, what will you do?" "I don't know. Go back to salvage. Maybe. It's what I know." "Or," she said, "you could come with me. Help rebuild. Not just Karis, but the connections between our peoples. Real connections, based on truth instead of lies. A human and a Karis queen that would raise some eyebrows." "Let them raise. We've already broken bigger taboos." Marcus visited the next day, somehow having talked his way past security. He brought news from the outside. Thorn's support is crumbling. 3 of his senior staff have already testified to the investigation committee. They're confirming parts of your evidence, trying to save themselves by throwing him to the wolves. "Cowards," Serenia said. "Survivors," Marcus corrected. "Not everyone can be heroes." "Speaking of heroes," Daniel said, "you didn't have to get involved in this." Marcus shrugged. 20 years I've been watching the rot spread. 20 years of keeping my head down, staying safe. Maybe it was time to remember what it felt like to fight for something." "Your daughter would be proud," Serenia said. Marcus's eyes grew distant. "I hope so. I really hope so." The trial began 2 weeks later. It would go on for months, every day bringing new revelations, new evidence of the corruption that had infected not just Thorn, but the entire power structure that had enabled him. Daniel testified about finding Serenia, about the condition she was in, about the device she'd protected with her life. Serenia testified about the betrayal, the torture, the systematic destruction of her people for profit. But the most damaging testimony came from an unexpected source. Colonel Sarah Mitchell had been Thorn's aide-de-camp, his most trusted officer. She took the stand on day 34 of the trial, and the courtroom fell silent. "Admiral Thorn ordered the attack on New Haven," she said, her voice steady despite the tears on her face. "He knew it was a human colony. He did it to create an atrocity that could be blamed on the Karis, to justify greater military action." The courtroom erupted. Thorn shot to his feet, shouting denials, but the damage was done. "Why?" the prosecutor asked. "Why would he do such a thing?" "Power," Mitchell said simply. "War was profitable. Peace was not. He needed the conflict to continue, needed enemies to fight. When the Karis agreed to negotiate, he had to destroy them, and he needed someone to blame for the human casualties." "And you went along with this?" "To my eternal shame. Yes. I believed. I wanted to believe we were doing what was necessary, that the ends justified the means." She looked directly at Serenia. "I was wrong, and I'm sorry. It will never be enough. But I'm sorry." That night, in their cell, Daniel and Serenia sat in silence, processing what they'd heard. "She helped destroy my people," Serenia said finally. "And yet—" "You forgive her." "I understand her. That's not the same as forgiveness. But it's a start." She leaned against him, careful of his still healing shoulder. "We're going to win this." "Yeah, we are. And then—" "Then we build something better. Together. Together." The next morning brought unexpected news. Admiral Thorn was dead, found in his cell. Apparent suicide. A note was found, neither confessing nor denying. Just 3 words: "I was right." "Coward to the end," Serenia said when they heard. But Daniel wondered. The security footage was corrupted. The guards had been mysteriously reassigned that night. Thorn had made many enemies, and some of them had longer reaches than the law. "It's not justice," Daniel said. "No," Serenia agreed. "But it's an ending." The trial continued without Thorn, focusing now on his network, his enablers. One by one, they fell, brought down by the weight of evidence and public outrage. The memorial for Karis Prime was held again, this time with the true casualty figures, with acknowledgement of the crimes committed by both sides. Serenia was asked to speak. She stood at the podium where Thorn had once stood, looking out at the crowd of humans and aliens alike. "We cannot bring back the dead," she said. "We cannot undo the pain, the betrayal, the loss. But we can choose to remember truly. We can choose to build a future on honest foundations instead of comfortable lies. And we can choose to see each other not as enemies, but as fellow survivors of a terrible deception." She looked at Daniel and the crowd, their eyes meeting across the distance. "I was left to die in the dark between stars," she continued. "But a human found me, saved me, stood with me against his own kind for the sake of truth. If such unexpected alliance is possible, then perhaps anything is." The crowd was silent for a moment. Then someone started clapping. Then another. Soon the entire memorial was applauding, humans and aliens alike. Not for victory, but for truth. Not for conquest, but for connection. Later, as they walked through the station, finally free, Daniel took Serenia's hand. "So what now, Your Majesty?" Now we live. Openly, honestly, without fear." She squeezed his hand. "And please, no more, Your Majesty. That was another life." "What should I call you then?" She smiled, that brilliant expression that transformed her face. "How about partner?" "Partner," he agreed. "I like the sound of that." The weeks following the trial were strange. Daniel had spent so long in crisis mode, constantly looking over his shoulder, that normalcy felt like another kind of danger. He and Serenia had taken temporary quarters in the diplomatic sector, a clean, quiet space that felt nothing like home. "You're pacing again," Serenia observed from where she sat, reviewing diplomatic documents. Her recovery was complete now, her pearl-like skin luminous with health, those fiber-optic strands of hair pulsing with calm, steady light. "Sorry, it's just too quiet." "You miss the excitement." "I miss having a clear purpose." He sat down across from her. Fighting Thorn, revealing the truth. That was simple. Right and wrong, clear as vacuum. But this, he gestured at the documents. Trade agreements, diplomatic protocols, reconstruction committees. It's important, but it's not. Not what you signed up for. "I didn't sign up for any of this," he said with a slight smile. "I just found a dying woman in a scrapyard. And look where that impulsive decision has led you." She reached across the table, taking his hand. "Daniel, you don't have to stay. You've done more than enough. You could return to the salvage yards, to your old life." "Is that what you want?" "I want you to be happy." "That's not an answer." She was quiet for a moment, then stood and moved to the window that overlooked the station's central plaza. Below, humans and various alien species mingled freely, something that would have been unthinkable just months ago. "My people are scattered," she said. "Those who survived have no unified leadership, no home to return to. The Karis Empire is broken, perhaps beyond repair. I've been receiving messages from survivors, asking for guidance, for hope. They call me queen, but what kind of queen rules over nothing but memories?" Daniel joined her at the window. "You could rebuild. Start something new. With what authority? With what resources?" She laughed bitterly. "Thorn is dead, but the system that created him remains. The corporations still profit from division. The military still prepares for the next war. And my people blame me for the destruction. That's not fair. You tried to make peace. And that peace led to our annihilation." She turned from the window. "There's something I haven't told you, something that wasn't in the evidence we broadcast." Daniel felt a chill run down his spine. "What kind of something?" "The kind that changes everything." She moved to a locked drawer, pulling out a datapad he'd never seen before. "This arrived yesterday, through diplomatic channels, but encrypted with Karis royal codes. Only someone from my inner circle could have sent it. She handed him the pad. The message was in Kara's script, but the translation overlay made it readable. Your Majesty, if you are reading this, then you survived as I hoped you would. The truth you revealed about Thorn was necessary, but incomplete. There is more you must know, though it brings me no joy to tell you. The betrayal ran deeper than just human greed. Our own High Council was complicit. They knew what Thorn planned. They allowed it. Some would say they encouraged it. You were too popular, too beloved by the common people. Your vision of peace threatened not just human war profiteers, but our own military caste. They needed you removed, but in a way that would unite our people in rage, rather than divide them in civil war. Thorn provided the perfect solution. A martyred queen, killed by human treachery, would give them the eternal enemy they needed to maintain power. But you survived, and now they fear your return more than they ever feared the humans. I tell you this not to cause you more pain, but to warn you. There are those among our people who are coming for you, not to restore you, but to ensure your permanent silence. Trust no one who claims to speak for the Karis nobility. They are all compromised. Burn this message after reading. Trust only those who have proven themselves in action, not words. Your servant always, Commander Zarek. Daniel read it twice, then looked at Serenia. Her face was calm, but he could see the storm in her golden eyes. Your own people sold you out. It would seem so. Her voice was steady, controlled, too controlled. Serenia. I suspected, of course. The speed of the betrayal, the precision of the attack, the way certain ships were mysteriously absent from the battle, but suspecting and knowing. She took the pad back, her fingers flying across the surface, deleting the message as instructed. Zarek was my most trusted commander. If he says this is true, then it is true. So what do we do? She looked at him sharply. This isn't your fight anymore. Daniel, this is Karis politics, the kind that ends with bodies floating in space. Stop it. Stop what? Stop trying to protect me by pushing me away. We've been through too much for that nonsense. She stared at him for a long moment, then laughed. But it was a sound full of pain. You impossible human. Don't you understand everyone who gets close to me dies or betrays me? Everyone. I'm still here. For how long until they come with better weapons? Until they offer you enough credits to make betrayal worthwhile? Daniel stood, moving to her, gently grasping her shoulders. Look at me. She resisted, then met his eyes. I took a shot for you. I gave up my safe, boring life for you. I stood against my own kind for you. You think I did all that just to walk away now? You did it for justice, for truth. I did it for you. The words hung between them, simple and honest. The justice and truth were bonuses. Before she could respond, an alarm began blaring through the station. Not the standard emergency tone, but the one reserved for diplomatic crises. Their room's communication panel lit up with an urgent message. Karis delegation has arrived. The message read, requesting immediate audience with Queen Serenia. Admiral Kesh commanding 3 dreadnoughts, armed and positioning around the station. Serenia went very still. Kesh, he was one of the High Council's chief enforcers. They're not here to talk, are they? No, they're here to finish what Thorn started. She straightened, and Daniel saw the Queen emerge, the survivor replaced by the ruler. But they've made a mistake. What mistake? They've come openly, officially. They can't just disappear me now. Not with the entire galaxy watching. She moved to the communication panel. Send response. Queen Serenia will receive Admiral Kesh in the public diplomatic forum in 1 hour. Full media presence requested. You're going to face them. I'm going to expose them, just like we exposed Thorn. She turned to him. But I need you to do something for me. Anything? Leave. Take a shuttle. Go to the outer rings. Disappear. When this goes bad, and it will, I don't want you caught in the crossfire. No. Daniel. No. We're partners. Remember, partners don't abandon each other when things get dangerous. She kissed him then, fierce and desperate. Stubborn human. Stubborn queen. The diplomatic forum was packed. Word had spread quickly about the Karis delegation's arrival, and everyone wanted to witness this historic meeting. The first official contact between Serenia and her people since the revelation of Thorne's betrayal. Admiral Kesh was exactly what Daniel had expected. Tall, even for a Karis, with skin like polished obsidian and hair that sparked with aggressive reds and oranges. He entered with a full honor guard, their weapons prominently displayed despite diplomatic protocols. Your Majesty, Kesh said, his bow precisely calibrated to be technically correct, but dismissively shallow. We rejoice to find you alive. Do you? Serenia's voice carried across the forum. How unexpected, given that no Karis forces searched for me. No Karis voices called for investigation when I was declared dead. We were at war, Majesty. Resources were limited. We were at peace negotiations. Resources were allocated to celebration, not rescue. Kesh's expression didn't change. Perhaps your Majesty's memory was affected by your ordeal. The records clearly show. The records show what the High Council wanted them to show. Serenia stood, and Daniel was struck again by how regal she could be, even in simple clothes. Just as they showed my death as heroic sacrifice rather than calculated betrayal. Murmurs ran through the crowd. The media drones buzzed closer. That's a serious accusation, Majesty. It's not an accusation. It's a statement of fact. She pulled out a holo projector, one Daniel hadn't known she had. Commander Zarek was thorough in his final investigation. Kesh went very still. Zarek is dead. Yes. Conveniently killed in a pirate raid 3 days after sending me evidence of the High Council's complicity with Admiral Thorne. The projector activated, showing documents, communications, financial transfers. The Council knew about Thorne's plan. They facilitated it. They needed me removed but wanted to maintain their power structure. Lies. Kesh stepped forward, his honor guard matching his movement. Human propaganda designed to divide us. Then you won't mind submitting to a neural scan to prove your innocence. The Admiral's hand went to his weapon. You dare question my honor? I question whether you have any honor left to question. The tension in the room ratcheted up. Security forces, both human and multi-species peacekeepers, shifted nervously. Daniel moved closer to Serenia, ready to throw himself between her and danger again if necessary. Then Rebecca Stone stood up in the media section. Admiral Kesh, would you care to comment on the financial records showing payments from your personal accounts to Admiral Thorne's shell companies? Kesh spun toward her. What records? The ones that just went live on every major network? Rebecca smiled coldly. Amazing what a good forensic accountant can find when they know where to look. The room erupted. Questions flew from every direction. Kesh's honor guard formed a defensive circle. Weapons raised. Human security responded in kind. Stand down, Serenia's voice cut through the chaos. There will be no violence here. Not in this place of diplomacy. You've betrayed your people, Kesh snarled. Exposed our weaknesses to our enemies. I've exposed the truth. If that weakens us, then we were already broken. The High Council has revoked your status. You are no longer queen. The High Council has no authority over me. They lost that when they conspired in my attempted murder. She stepped forward, and despite being surrounded by armed guards, Kesh stepped back. I am Serenia, last rightful queen of Karis. I speak for those who survived your betrayal, for those who died in your wars, for those who want a future built on something other than lies and fear. You speak for no one. You're alone, abandoned, clinging to a human for protection. Daniel felt the insult like a physical blow, but Serenia just smiled. Yes, I found protection with a human, a salvage worker who showed more honor in his smallest gesture than you've shown in your entire career. If that's what you call weakness, then I choose weakness over your strength. Kesh drew his weapon. Then you choose death. Everything happened at once. Security forces moved, weapons were raised, someone screamed, but before anyone could fire, Serenia did something Daniel had never seen before. Her hair, those fiber-optic strands, suddenly blazed with light. Not the gentle pulses he was used to, but a burning, brilliant display that filled the room. The light formed patterns, symbols that hurt to look at directly. Every Karis in the room, including Kesh's honor guard, dropped to their knees. "You forget," Serenia said, her voice now carrying harmonics that made the air vibrate, "that I am not queen by appointment or politics. I am queen by blood, by the ancient rites, by the light of our first star. You cannot revoke what the cosmos itself has granted." Kesh tried to stand, but couldn't. The old ways are dead. The old ways are all that remain when the new ways fail. The light dimmed slightly, but didn't disappear. "You came here to kill me, Admiral. But you've only succeeded in showing our people who truly serves Karis, and who serves only themselves." She turned to address the cameras, the media drones, her light casting strange shadows throughout the forum. "To my people, scattered among the stars, I say this: you were betrayed, not just by humanity's worst, but by those among us who valued power over peace, control over compassion. I cannot undo what was done. I cannot bring back the dead or rebuild what was destroyed. But I can offer you truth. I can offer you a choice. Continue following those who led you to destruction, or help me build something new. Not the Karis Empire of old, with its rigid castes and military dominance, not subservience to humanity or any other power, but a true alliance, based on mutual respect and shared purpose. I stand here with a human who saved my life, who sacrificed his safety for my truth, who chose justice over the comfort of ignorance. If such bridges can be built between individuals, they can be built between peoples." The light faded completely, and she stood there, just Serenia again. But something had changed. The Karis honor guard hadn't moved from their knees. Even Kesh remained bowed. "You have 1 hour to leave the station," she told him. "Tell the High Council that their queen lives. Tell them she remembers everything. And tell them that their time is ending." Kesh finally stood, his face a mask of rage and something else. Fear. Maybe. "This isn't over." "No," Serenia agreed. "It's just beginning." The Admiral and his guard left in formation, their departure watched by billions across known space. As soon as they were gone, Serenia swayed. Daniel caught her, feeling her tremble. "That light show," he whispered. "What was that?" "Something I haven't done in years. Something that costs more than you know." Blood was trickling from her nose, copper bright against her pearl skin. "But necessary. The old bloodlines carry certain abilities." Kesh knew the stories, but never believed them. Now he does. "You're hurt. I'm alive. That's more than they intended." Rebecca approached them, her expression thoughtful. "That was either the bravest or stupidest thing I've ever seen." "Can't it be both?" Daniel asked. "With you two, always." She pulled out her data pad. "The response is already coming in. Karis survivors from across the galaxy are declaring allegiance to Serenia. Not all, but enough. The High Council's authority is crumbling." "Which makes them desperate," Serenia said. "And desperate powers do desperate things." Marcus's voice crackled over Daniel's private comm. "Kid, you need to see this. Ships are moving. Not just Karis. Everyone. Something big is happening." They made their way to the observation deck, where tactical displays showed the situation. Dozens of ships were converging on the station's position, Karis vessels, but also human military, corporate security forces, and even some independent militia. "They're going to fight over you," Daniel said, understanding dawning. "The High Council, the human government, the corporations. You're a symbol now. Whoever controls you controls the narrative," Serenia finished. "And the narrative controls the future." An emergency transmission cut across all channels. A human face appeared, one Daniel recognized with a sinking heart. General Harrison, Thorne's successor. "By order of the United Human Defense Force, the station is under military quarantine. The alien known as Serenia is to be taken into protective custody, pending investigation of threats to human security." Before the transmission ended, another began. The Karis High Council, their faces hidden behind ceremonial masks. "The false Queen Serenia is declared exile and traitor. Any who harbor her will be considered enemies of the Karis people." "Well," Daniel said, "we're popular." "Despite everything," Serenia laughed. "How do you do that?" "Do what?" "Find humor when the universe is collapsing around us." "It's a human thing. We laugh so we don't scream." He took her hand. "What's the plan?" "Plan." She looked at the converging ships, at the station beginning to panic, at the future fracturing into 1,000 sharp pieces. "I don't have a plan." "Then we make one up as we go. Another human specialty." A new ship appeared on the tactical display, small and fast, coming in at an angle that would put it at the station in minutes. Daniel's comm unit chimed. "Kid," Marcus's voice came through. "Remember that emergency fund I mentioned? Well, I may have used it for something else. Hope you don't mind." The small ship resolved on the display. It was a courier vessel, built for speed over armor, the kind smugglers and independent traders favored. "Marcus, what did you do?" "Bought you a future. Bay 12. Level 3. You've got maybe 5 minutes before everyone realizes what's happening." Daniel looked at Serenia. "Your call. Stay and fight a battle we can't win, or run and live to fight another day." She looked at the displays, at the forces converging, at the inevitable violence about to unfold. Then she looked at him. "I've been running my whole life, running toward duty, toward peace, toward an impossible ideal. Maybe it's time to run toward something else." "Like what?" "Like a life, like a choice made freely, not from obligation but from desire." She squeezed his hand. "Like a stubborn human who thinks I'm worth saving." They ran. The station was in chaos. Security forces trying to establish control, civilians fleeing to shelters, diplomatic staff arguing about jurisdiction. Daniel and Serenia moved through it like ghosts, using service corridors and maintenance shafts, the routes Daniel had memorized during his years as a salvage tech. They reached Bay 12, just as the first weapons fire erupted outside the station. The Karis and human forces hadn't started shooting at each other yet, but someone had fired on someone, and that was all it took. The courier ship sat waiting, engines hot, cargo ramp down. Marcus stood at the base of the ramp, and he wasn't alone. Rebecca was there, along with a handful of others. Colonel Mitchell, the officer who had testified against Thorne. 2 Karis Daniel didn't recognize. A couple of maintenance workers from the salvage yards. "What is this?" Serenia asked. "The beginning of something," Marcus said. "Or maybe the end. Either way, it's a choice. You're all risking everything." "Everything was already at risk," Mitchell said. "At least this way. We're risking it for something worthwhile." Explosions rocked the station. They were out of time. They boarded quickly, the ship lifting off before the ramp was fully closed. Daniel took the pilot's seat, his hands remembering skills from before his salvage days, when he dreamed of flying between stars instead of picking through their wreckage. The space around the station was turning into a battlefield. The Karis dreadnoughts were engaging human military vessels. Corporate security forces were shooting at everyone. And in the middle of it all, their small courier ship slipped through the chaos like hope through despair. "Where are we going?" someone asked. Daniel looked at Serenia, who was staring back at the station, at the violence erupting in her wake. "Away," she said simply, "towards something new." As they reached the edge of the system, preparing to jump to hyperspace, a transmission broke through. It was weak, personal, meant only for them. Commander Zarek's face appeared on the screen. He was older than Daniel had expected, scarred, wearing the uniform of the Karis resistance. "My queen," he said, "I'm glad you received my message. I'm gladder still that you survived. The High Council's treachery is known now. The people are rising. Not all. Not yet. But enough. Your light in the Forum was seen throughout Karis space. They remember what queens were meant to be." "Zarek," Serenia breathed, "you're alive." "Barely. But alive enough to tell you this. You were right. Peace was possible. It still is. But not the peace of empires and councils. The peace of individuals choosing to trust, to build, to love despite the darkness." His image flickered, the transmission weakening. "Find your peace, my queen. Show us it's possible. And when you're ready, when you've built something worth sharing, come back to us. Not as queen, but as proof that we can be more than what we were made to be." The transmission ended. Daniel engaged the hyperdrive, and the stars stretched into lines of light. Behind them, the station receded. The battle continued. The old world tore itself apart. But ahead was something else. Unknown, uncertain, but theirs to shape. "So," Daniel said, reaching for Serenia's hand. "Partners." She took it, intertwining her fingers with his. Partners. The ship jumped to hyperspace, carrying its small crew toward a future that no one could predict. In the cargo hold, humans and Karis sat together, sharing rations, sharing stories, sharing the radical act of choosing cooperation over conflict. It wasn't the ending anyone had expected, not the grand victory or tragic defeat that history preferred. Just a group of individuals who had decided that the past didn't have to define the future. And in the vast darkness between stars, that was enough to begin. The planet didn't have a name, just a designation K4739C. It was the kind of world that appeared on no tourist guides, no trade routes, no military strategic maps. A forgotten rock orbiting a dying star, with just enough atmosphere to breathe and just enough water to survive. Perfect for people who needed to disappear. They'd been there 3 months now, their courier ship hidden in a canyon while they built something that was starting to feel like home. It wasn't much, just prefab structures arranged in a rough circle, but it was theirs. Daniel stood on the ridge overlooking their small settlement, watching the binary sunset paint the sky in shades of purple and gold. The sound of laughter drifted up from below, where Rebecca was teaching some of the younger Karis refugees how to play poker, using ration packets as chips. "You're brooding again," Serenia said, appearing beside him with a silence that still sometimes startled him. "Thinking, not brooding." "Ah, the distinction is crucial." She sat beside him on the flat rock he'd claimed as his thinking spot. "What are you thinking about?" "How quiet it is. How normal it feels. How I keep waiting for everything to fall apart. And it hasn't. 3 months. And we're still here. Still alive. Still." He struggled for the word. "Free. I was going to say together, but free works too." She leaned against him, a casual intimacy that had developed naturally over the weeks. "Marcus says the supply run went well. No one questioned his credentials. No one recognized him. That beard helps. Makes him look like a completely different person. Makes him look like a vagrant." "That too." They sat in comfortable silence, watching the suns disappear behind the horizon. The stars emerged quickly here, the thin atmosphere offering little interference. Among them, Daniel could pick out the constellation that contained the station they'd fled. That whole section of space probably still embroiled in political chaos. "Any word from Zarek?" he asked. "Encrypted burst yesterday. The Karis Civil War is officially over. The High Council stepped down, or were stepped down, depending on who you ask. A provisional government is forming, with representation from all castes, not just the military. That's good, right? It's progress. She pulled her knees to her chest, a surprisingly vulnerable gesture. They want me to come back, to be part of the new government. Daniel's heart skipped. And I told them no. 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 I'm done being a symbol, a figurehead, a tool for others' ambitions. Let them build their new world. I'll build mine here. Daniel corrected. Ours. She smiled. Ours. A commotion from below drew their attention. A group was gathered around the communication array they'd set up. Voices raised in excitement. Daniel and Serenia made their way down, finding Mitchell at the center of the crowd. "What's happening?" Daniel asked. Mitchell turned to them, her face a mix of disbelief and hope. The Earth Senate just passed the Reconciliation Act, full amnesty for all refugees from the Karis conflict, human and alien alike. And she paused, as if not quite believing what she was about to say. They're officially recognizing interspecies colonies, places like ours. "You're joking," Rebecca said. "I'm not. It's all here." Mitchell displayed the official documentation. "We're legal. We can trade, travel, exist without hiding." The settlement erupted in celebration. Karis and humans embracing, crying, laughing. 3 months of tension, of looking over shoulders, of jumping at every unexpected sound, finally releasing. But Daniel noticed Serenia had gone still. "What's wrong?" he asked quietly. "It's too easy. Too convenient." She studied the documentation. "Why now? What's changed?" Marcus limped over, having heard her concerns. "Maybe people got tired of fighting. It happens, you know. War exhausts itself eventually." "Or someone needs us for something," Serenia said. As if in answer, the communication array chimed with an incoming transmission. Priority encrypted. Diplomatic codes Daniel recognized, but hadn't seen in months. The face that appeared on the screen was familiar, but unexpected. Dr. James Chen, who'd become the interim president of the Earth Senate after the chaos following Thorne's death. "Queen Serenia, Mr. Cross," he began formally. Then his expression softened. "I hope this message finds you well." "We're not interested in whatever you're selling," Daniel said. "I'm not selling anything. I'm asking, begging. Really." He looked tired, older than when they'd last seen him. "We need your help." "We?" Serenia asked. "Humanity. The Karis. The dozen other species caught up in this mess. The peace is holding, but barely. There are too many wounds, too much distrust. The extremists on all sides are gaining ground. They point to the violence, the betrayals, and say coexistence is impossible." "Maybe they're right," Serenia said coldly. "You don't believe that. If you did, you wouldn't have built what you've built. A functioning interspecies colony. Humans and Karis living together, working together, choosing to trust despite everything." Daniel exchanged glances with Serenia. "You've been watching us. Monitoring, not watching. We needed to know if it was real, if it could work. And it does. You're proof that the future we're trying to build is possible." "Good for you," Daniel said. "We're still not interested. I'm not asking you to come back. I'm asking you to let others come to you. Delegations, observers, people who need to see that peace isn't just the absence of war, but the presence of something better." "You want to turn us into a zoo?" Serenia's hair flickered with angry light. "I want to turn you into a model, a template, a hope that others can follow." He leaned forward. "I know you have no reason to trust me, but Rebecca Stone does. Ask her about my history. Ask her why I was one of the few in government who questioned Thorne from the beginning." The transmission ended, leaving them in silence. Rebecca cleared her throat. "He's not wrong. Chen was one of my sources during the investigation. He risked everything to get me information. That doesn't mean we should trust him now, Mitchell said. No, Marcus said, but it means we should consider what he's asking. They debated through the night. Some wanted to remain hidden, safe in their anonymity. Others saw an opportunity to influence the wider galaxy. The Karis refugees were split, as were the humans. Finally, Serenia stood. We vote. That's how we've done everything here. And that's how we'll do this. All in favor of allowing limited delegations. Hands rose. Not all, but most. Against? Fewer hands. Abstaining. A few, including Daniel. Serenia looked at him, surprised. You're not voting. I'll support whatever the group decides. But this choice, it changes everything. We go from being refugees to being examples. From people to symbols. I've seen what that does to someone. He looked at her meaningfully. She took his hand. Then, we'll have to be very careful not to lose ourselves in what others need us to be. The first delegation arrived 2 weeks later. A mixed group, humans and Karis, but also Altarians and 2 species Daniel couldn't identify. They came expecting either a utopia or a facade. What they found was neither. They found Daniel and a Karis engineer arguing over the best way to repair a water purifier. Their disagreement passionate, but respectful. They found human children playing with Karis younglings, inventing games that required both species' unique abilities. They found Rebecca teaching Karis journalism, while learning their historical documentation methods. They found problems too. Cultural misunderstandings that led to hurt feelings. Resource disputes that required careful negotiation. The occasional fight that had to be broken up. But they also found solutions being worked out in real time. Compromises being made. Trust being built one small interaction at a time. How, one delegate asked Serenia, how do you make it work? We don't make it work, she replied. We let it work. We choose to see each other as individuals, not representatives of species, or governments, or past sins. That's naive. That's necessary. The delegations kept coming. Some stayed for days, others for hours. A few asked to remain permanently, and the colony grew, slowly, carefully, but it grew. Daniel found himself acting as an unofficial guide, showing visitors around, explaining their systems. During one such tour, a young Karis approached him. You're the human who saved our queen, she said. I'm a human who found someone who needed help. The stories say you stood against your own kind for her. The stories exaggerate. Do they? Then why do you have the bonding mark? Daniel touched his shoulder unconsciously, where Serenia had performed the Karis bonding ritual a month ago, leaving a faint pattern on his skin that showed their connection. That's different. Is it you chose her over your species? She chose you over hers. Together, you chose to build this. She gestured at the growing settlement. That's not a small story. That evening, Daniel found Serenia in their shared quarters, reviewing supply manifests. The space was small, but comfortable, decorated with salvaged items from the station and new crafts from the colony. Long day, she asked without looking up. Getting longer. 3 more groups want to visit next month. We're becoming a tourist destination. We're becoming something. He sat beside her, pulling the manifest pad from her hands. But is it what we wanted? She considered the question. What we wanted was to survive. We've done that. Then we wanted to be free. We've done that too. Now, I think we're building what comes after wanting, which is living, real living, not just existing. She turned to face him fully. I received another message from the Karis Provisional Government. They're offering me a position, ambassador to the human worlds. Daniel's chest tightened. And I'm considering it. The words hung between them like a blade. I see, he said quietly. No, you don't. She caught his face in her hands. I'm considering it on one condition, that you come with me, as my partner, my equal, my, what's the human term, husband? Daniel's brain stopped working for a moment. Is this a proposal? I suppose it is. Though I should warn you, Karis marriage ceremonies involve ritual combat. Of course they do. And lengthy genealogical recitations. Naturally. And a binding that lasts beyond death. Wouldn't expect anything less? He pulled her close. Yes. Yes. Yes to all of it. The marriage, the ambassadorship, the ritual combat. Though I should mention, human ceremonies involve cake. Cake. It's very important. Ask anyone. She laughed. That crystal sound he'd first heard in a maintenance room that felt like a lifetime ago. Then we'll have cake. The ceremony happened a month later, overseen by Marcus, who had somehow gotten himself ordained through an obscure online ministry. It was a mixture of human and Karis traditions that probably violated both, but felt right for them. The entire colony attended, along with delegations from 3 worlds. Rebecca served as Daniel's witness, Colonel Mitchell as Serenya's. The cake was slightly lopsided, baked in an oven jerry-rigged from salvaged ship parts. The ritual combat was more ritualistic than combative, though Daniel would sport a bruise for weeks after. When they exchanged vows, Daniel spoke in halting Karis, while Serenya responded in perfectly accented English. The words were simple, promises to stand together, to choose each other even when easier paths presented themselves, to build something worth preserving. As they kissed, sealing the bond, the colony erupted in celebration. Music from a dozen worlds mixed in the night air. Stories were shared, drinks were passed, and for one perfect moment, the universe felt whole. Later, standing again on the ridge where they'd made their decision to stay, Daniel and Serenya watched their colony celebrate below. Any regrets? She asked. About which part? Finding you, saving you, following you to the edge of known space, or marrying you. Any of it, all of it. Daniel thought about his old life, the safety of routine, the simplicity of salvage work. Then he looked at what they'd built, what they were still building. Not one, he said honestly. I regret many things. The war, the betrayals, the deaths I couldn't prevent. She paused. But not this. Never this. A shooting star streaked across the sky. Or maybe it was a ship entering atmosphere. These days, it could be either. So what now? Daniel asked. Ambassador Serenya and her human husband, building bridges across the galaxy. Something like that. Though I prefer to think of us as Serenya and Daniel. 2 people who found each other in the dark and decided to light a candle rather than curse it. That's very poetic. I was a philosopher before I was a queen, remember? And now I'm just yours. And I'm yours. They stood together, watching the stars, the colony, the future spreading out before them. It wasn't the future either of them had planned. Daniel should have been a salvage tech, safe and anonymous. Serenya should have been a queen, powerful and alone. Instead, they were something new, not human, not Karis, but something in between, something that shouldn't exist but did, built from trust and stubbornness and the radical belief that people could choose to be better than their worst impulses. 6 months later, they stood before the Earth Senate and the Karis Provisional Council, presenting their proposal for systematic interspecies colonies. The room was skeptical, the old prejudices still visible in the set of shoulders, the suspicious glances. You're asking us to trust, one senator said. After everything, you're asking us to simply trust. No, Serenya replied. We're asking you to try. Trust comes later, after the trying works. And if it doesn't, then at least we failed attempting something worthy, rather than succeeding at something shameful. It would take years for the proposal to be fully accepted. Decades for the colonies to become commonplace. But it started there, in that room, with a human and a Karis standing together. Proof that the impossible was merely difficult. Daniel thought about that day in the scrapyard, finding a dying queen in a broken pod. Such a small moment that had led to such large changes. He wondered what would have happened if he'd walked away, if he'd chosen safety over compassion. But that was another universe, another story. In this one, he'd chosen to help. She'd chosen to trust. Together, they'd chosen to build. And in the vast darkness between stars, in the cold spaces where hope went to die, they'd proven that sometimes, just sometimes, two broken things could come together and create something whole. The colony on K4739C would grow into a city, then a civilization. It would become known as Haven, a place where species mixed freely, where the past was acknowledged but not allowed to poison the future. Historians would argue about its founding, about the moment it truly began. Was it when Daniel opened the pod, when Serenia chose to trust him, when they stood against Thorn, when they fled the station, when they said yes to the first delegation? But Daniel and Serenia knew the truth. It began with a choice, repeated daily, to see each other not as alien and human, not as queen and salvage tech, but as two people who had decided that together was better than apart. And in a universe full of impossible things, that simple choice was the most impossible of all, and the most powerful. Years later, an old man would sit in a bar on Haven, telling stories to anyone who would listen. His hands shook slightly. His hair was white as starlight, but his voice was strong. "I knew them both," Marcus would say, "before they were legends, when they were just scared kids trying to survive. You want to know the secret, the real secret of how they changed everything?" The listeners would lean in, eager for wisdom. They didn't try to change everything. They just tried to save each other. The rest, he would wave his hand, encompassing the thriving city around them, the mixed species crowds, the peace that had lasted longer than the war. The rest was just stubbornness. He would raise his glass, a toast to the empty chairs where his friends once sat. To Daniel and Serenia, to the fool and the queen, to the ones who showed us that human and alien were just words, and words could be rewritten. And in the crowd, someone would always ask, did they really love each other, a human and a Karis? Marcus would smile, the expression containing decades of memories. Kid, they didn't just love each other. They chose each other. Every day. Against all odds. Against all logic. Against the entire universe telling them it was impossible. They chose each other. And that choice, he would conclude, draining his glass. That stubborn, impossible, beautiful choice that changed everything. The story would spread, told and retold, changing with each telling but keeping its heart. A story of rescue and revenge, of betrayal and redemption, of two people who found each other in the dark and decided to be each other's light. It was a small story, in the grand scheme of things. The universe was vast, full of empires rising and falling, wars beginning and ending, stories grander and more dramatic. But sometimes the small stories were the ones that mattered most. Sometimes, all it took to change the universe was one person choosing to help another. Sometimes, that was enough. And in a small room on a space station, or in a hidden corner of a forgotten planet, or in the vast spaces between stars where the lost things drifted, someone would remember that even in the darkest places, there was always the possibility of being found, of being saved, of being chosen. And that possibility, fragile as it was what made humans human, what made Karis Karis, what made any sentient being capable of more than mere survival. It was what made them capable of love. And love, as Daniel Cross and Queen Serenia had proved, was the most powerful force in any universe.